Director Radue, will you please call the roll?
Regent Atwell,
Here.
Regent Bailing,
Here.
Regent Delgado,
Here.
Regent Erickson,
Here.
Regent Evers,
Here.
Regent Farrow,
Here.
Regent Grebe,
Here.
Regent Hall,
Here.
Regent Higgins,
Here.
Regent Jones, Regent Klein,
Here.
Regent Milner,
Here.
Regent Mueller,
Here.
Regent Peterson, Regent Ring,
Here.
Regent Stile,
Here.
Regent Tyler,
Here.
Regent Whitburn.
Here.
All are present.
Thank you. The minutes of the June 2017 Board of Regents meeting have been provided. May I have a motion approving these minutes?
So moved. Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion or corrections? If none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes, and thank you. Next on the agenda is a report of the President of the Board, starting with the Wisconsin Technical College System Report. The report was included in your materials. I wanted to see were there any questions or comments in regard to the report that was provided. Seeing none, I'll go ahead and move forward with my report. Consistent with previous precedents, it's my job to provide a report of the President. Since you've only had me on the job for about 4 weeks, it's a pretty short report. However, I did want to take the time and the opportunity to talk a little bit about moving forward. Before I do that, I did want to recognize one regent who's with us, Regent Milner. Know that under Regent Milner's leadership in the past 2 years, we improved relationships that had been severed with the legislature. We opened doors to private sector companies and created collaborations and partnerships that we've never had before, and we adopted important reforms, like tenure. Know that it was indeed an honor to be your vice president. During your term, we accomplished much. I thank you for your leadership, and most importantly, I thank you for your friendship. Looking to the future, let's first discuss tenure. During my remarks last year at Regent Whitburn's Education Committee, I said to the committee, unless we addressed the phantom of accountability, we would never improve our budget situation. In fact, it was such an important point, I said it twice. Unless we address the phantom of accountability, whether real or perceived, our budget situation would never improve. To our credit, this board adopted a revised policy. This was not easy to do, and we were criticized by some. Looking forward, however, because we addressed tenure, and now in the words of Chancellor Gao and some of our other chancellors, we have seen the best budget we have seen in 10 years. Our budget includes the largest salary increase in a decade, proof that adopting the tenure modifications were absolutely the right move. Moving forward, I'd like to continue to advocate for increased salaries in order to keep top-notch employees in Wisconsin. Chancellors, I want you to be able to recruit and retain your very best employees. I know that you have my commitment that on every issue going forward, it will be designed to help keep our schools competitive, world-class, and accessible to all. Another area of reform is the recruitment and hiring of leadership at our campuses. When I first joined the board, Regent Gary Roberts said, it shouldn't take months upon months for us to recruit chancellors. I agree with Regent Roberts. He was right about that. I think that an extended recruitment sometimes does result in us not being able to recruit the best and the brightest. Although the board has no formal policy regarding chancellors, vice chancellors, and presidents to come from academic backgrounds, many times our searches result in finding candidates with only that experience. Therefore, I've asked Regent Vice President Peterson to lead a working group to streamline our hiring process. In addition to streamlining, I want to expand the recruitment to include leaders from outside academia. Across the country, hiring of private sector individuals to lead universities is the latest trend. The University of Wisconsin makes sure our hiring process allows for a pool of candidates that is both diverse and dynamic. In the weeks ahead, I'll be finalizing the composition of the work group, and I will ask for a report along with a recommendation. It is my plan that this board adopt any necessary policies and procedures regarding hiring yet in the year 2017. Additionally, this board must continue to build strong relationships with legislators. We've come a long way, and our current budget is a tremendous investment into the UW system. But I think if we work hard together, the next budget can be even better. With this goal in mind, know that I've spent the last 4 weeks working with legislative leaders and the governor's office to make that happen. Know that in those meetings, it's been clear the legislature wants us to be bold and forward-leaning. Therefore, I've asked President Crosse and his team to review our current policies and develop potential changes that will actively ensure that all students have the freedom to express their views on campuses. I have asked these proposals be ready for our review at our very next board meeting in October. To emphasize our commitment to acting on this issue, I've asked Vice President Peterson to introduce a resolution regarding freedom of expression and asked that this board take up this item immediately after my remarks. As board members, we all agreed to serve on this board because the UW system is so important to all of us. President Crosse frequently says, and I agree with him, the UW is the economic engine that drives our state's economy. Know that I look forward to working with each of you to build on our success and continue to make sure that every Wisconsin student, whether you're a rural farm kid like myself from Polk County or from inner city Milwaukee, that you have a chance to get a UW education, which is both affordable and world-class. With that, let's get started. Vice President Peterson, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Regent President Bailing, thank you for those fine remarks. Let me take just a moment to share a few words about the freedom of expression resolution that I'm putting forward. Then I will read the actual resolution for those in the audience who may not have seen the document which was distributed publicly yesterday morning. Back in 2015, this board moved Resolution 10600, which addressed the region's strong support for freedom of speech and expression concepts and practices. At the time, I believe we did so because our students and faculty from varied backgrounds, ethnicities, and certainly holding a spectrum of beliefs expressed concerns about viewpoints being stifled on campuses. And these individuals shared feelings as though their First Amendment rights were being jeopardized. These dispositions were not limited to just the Madison campus, but were rather more widespread, affecting many of our system campuses, both 2-year and 4. When we passed that resolution, I spoke in favor of the effort and said the University of Wisconsin system, at its core, is founded on the virtues of freedom of speech and expression. I reminded my colleagues of the historical quote about the sifting and winnowing by which the truth can be found, taken from a Board of Regents report in 1894. That quote served as our beacon to students and faculty. It laid down a marker of support for them. Protecting and enhancing the discourse and civil dialogue on our campuses should be, and I believe is, of paramount importance to all of us as regents, as parents, as citizens, and as taxpayers. Whether it be provocative thought or provocative and potentially breakthrough research, the lecture halls and laboratories of our universities must remain open, inquisitive, and unfettered. Back in 2015, and I will reinforce today, there is never a bad time to reaffirm our commitment to freedom of speech and expression. The following resolution, in my opinion, is concise and it's also direct. And here's what it's not. It is not prescriptive and it's not punitive in scope. It is rather a guidepost for our campuses to be alert, to honor opposing views, and to promote a civil discourse environment. With that, I'm pleased to forward this resolution that I'll share with you now. Whereas it is critical to the mission of the University of Wisconsin system and the Wisconsin idea that different and varied viewpoints are shared and examined. And whereas the Board of Regents and the UW system are committed to freedom of expression and ensuring every voice on every campus is heard and respected. And whereas the Board of Regents has demonstrated its strong support of the freedom of expression with the adoption of Resolution 10600 in December of 2015, which addressed and emphasized the board's commitment to freedom of expression and to providing all members of the university community the broadest possible latitude to explore ideas and to speak, write, listen, challenge, and learn. And whereas in December 2015, the Board of Regents also affirmed each institution in the University of Wisconsin system has a solemn responsibility not only to promote a lively and fearless exploration, deliberation, and debate of ideas, but also to protect those freedoms when others attempt to restrict them. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Regents and the University of Wisconsin system are committed to honoring freedom of speech and expression as the system reviews existing policies to ensure each of our campuses supports and maintains an environment where civil discussions can occur as students learn, study, and prepare for their futures.
Thank you. Motion on the floor, is there a second?
I second the motion.
Moved and seconded. Discussion. Regent Higgins.
Regent Bailing, I applaud your presentation of the motion, and because we did in fact pass this in December 2015, there are certain of our colleagues and possibly some members of the audience who have not actually seen the document, Resolution 10600, that we refer to in this resolution. So I'd like to take just a second to read some salient passages from the statement we made back in December of 2015. Freedom of expression includes the right to discuss and present scholarly opinions and conclusions on all matters both in and outside the classroom. These freedoms include the right to speak and write as a member of the university community or as a private citizen without institutional discipline or restraint on scholarly matters or on matters of public concern. Of course, different ideas in the university community will often and quite naturally conflict, but it is not the proper role of the university to attempt to shield individuals from ideas and opinions they or others find unwelcome, disagreeable, or even deeply offensive. Although the university greatly values civility, concerns about civility and mutual respect can never be used as justification for closing off discussion of ideas, however offensive or disagreeable those ideas may be to some members within the university community. These principles carry responsibilities. Although members of the university community at each institution are free to criticize and contest the views expressed on campus, they may not obstruct or otherwise interfere with the freedom of others, including speakers who invited to campus, to express views they reject or even loathe. Each institution in the University of Wisconsin system has a solemn responsibility not only to promote lively and fearless exploration, deliberation, and debate of ideas, but also to protect those freedoms when others attempt to restrict them. It is for the members of the university community, not for the institution itself, to make those judgments for themselves and to act on those judgments not by seeking to suppress exploration of ideas or expression of speech, but by openly and vigorously contesting the ideas that they oppose. Indeed, fostering the ability of members of the university community to engage in such debate and deliberation in an effective and responsible manner is an essential part of each institution's educational mission. And I thank you for the opportunity to reaffirm those principles today.
Thank you. Other discussion? Regent Klein.
Go ahead. As a proud graduate of the University of Wisconsin-Madison, I think back on my days on campus, and I was a political science major, sitting in the Rathskeller, batting around ideas and talking freely and arguing in a spirit of civil discourse. And so I'm here to speak in support of the resolution. I thought about this a little bit and long and hard, and you know, universities have to be the marketplace of ideas. That is a fundamental, you know, part of growing up and learning and understanding different viewpoints. And it's okay to have different political viewpoints. What is not, in my judgment, something we should debate is whether or not the Constitution and the Bill of Rights guarantees freedom of expression, because that's something that unites us and we all agree with. So, consistent with the Wisconsin idea, we follow the truth wherever it leads. And I am in full support of this resolution.
Thank you, Regent Klein. Regent Delgado.
Thank you very much, Regent President. I would like to thank you. I think this is a very timely occasion for restating the freedom, our commitment to freedom of speech. And the reason for that is recently there have been discussions in the legislature. And it's very apparent that our announcement, our policy of 2015 was done without great bombastic affairs, but it was meant to be a long-lasting and deep application, and that many people were not aware of it, okay, including some of our legislators. So it is good to remind them that we have done this, that this university Board of Regents have wanted to be front and center and helping and providing direction to our university management at every one of our campuses, that this is in fact a policy and that we expect it to be applied. Whether that has been done in great deal or not depends on judging these individual incidents, but I say in general we have survived quite well the whole attack against free speech, and we intend to remind everybody so that there be no doubt about it what the policy of this university system is and what we expect people to apply. So thank you for that, and it's good that we're on record that we have spoken about it, and we intend to speak about it again.
Thank you, Regent Delgado. Regent Atwell.
I'm grateful for the resolution and appreciate the direct effort to address it. Like Regent Klein, this matter has caused me to reflect on my youth many, many years ago, which was not at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, but it was a small private liberal arts college in the state. And as I look back from the distance of time, some 40 years, it's somewhat embarrassing to realize some of the things that I thought and said in those years, but I'm very grateful that I was in school in an atmosphere where people really did let it flow. And I found that to be very constructive, and over time, not everything I've said in my life is stupid and embarrassing, but I think there is an aspect of freedom of expression that we have to realize that, you know, human beings are not, they don't always say and think great things, and there needs to be a process by which people can say them and interact and learn and grow. And I'm very grateful for the experience I had, and I hope that that's the case on all of our university campuses here. It certainly was like that in the 70s when I was young.
Thank you, Regent Atwell. Other discussion? Regent Hall.
So I also support the resolution, but I also support it with the belief that we have the commitment that the environment, the landscape on our campuses will still be safe, so that no matter what the opinions are, people feel safe and secure on the campuses. And that is the only, caution that I have within this support. So I just wanted to go on record to say that I support it, but it is with that belief, commitment, that we will maintain safety and security on our campuses.
Thank you, Regent Hall. Other discussion? Regent Milner.
I appreciate the opportunity to be able to support this resolution. A culture that supports the Wisconsin idea must be an example from the top. And this is never more important, both here in the state of Wisconsin and also across the nation. So I applaud this effort.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Seeing none, it looks like we're ready to vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes, and thank you. With that, it concludes my president's report. Now we turn it over to President Crosse for his report from around the system. Thank you.
Thank you, Regent President Bailing. I would just make one final comment on the issues surrounding freedom of speech and expression. Without civility, it is virtually impossible for the university to pursue its mission, the pursuit of truth. With that, I'll start my report by highlighting several recent events. Our first ever Wisconsin Idea Summit took place on June 19th in Madison. The intent of these summits, and this was just the first, is for the UW system to convene leaders from business, from government, from the community, and the university to address the biggest challenges facing the state. As we identify those challenges and become aware of their significance, we convene experts from around the state to help identify solutions. Our inaugural summit, the Wisconsin Idea Dairy Summit, brought together dairy producers, processors, industry leaders, federal and state, legislative leaders and staff, and academic researchers, and leaders to discuss the current state of the dairy industry and the potential opportunities for our future. Nearly 200 people attended the summit, reflecting a who's who of the dairy industry in the state. Participants heard from industry experts from academia, including Mark Stevenson from the Center for Dairy Profitability here at Madison and UW Extension, and John Lucy of UW-Madison's Center on Dairy Research. There were also representatives from the Dairy Business Association, from the Professional Dairy Producers of Wisconsin, from Wisconsin Farm Bureau, the Wisconsin Milk Marketing Board, and representatives from the University of Wisconsin at River Falls, University of Wisconsin at Platteville, and of course from UW Extension. All of those were heavily involved in this summit. So following up on the summit, participants are being surveyed to help prioritize the action steps we should take next. To move forward on these next steps, we look forward to working with Secretary Ben Bransel of the Department of Ag, Trade, and Consumer Protection. So planning is already underway for future Wisconsin Idea Summits. We welcome your ideas for possible topics and hope you can join us at these future events. And for updates from our campuses, here is our news from around the system. Cue the video. Students in the UW Superior Black Student Union honored Superior Police Chief Nicholas Alexander. They presented him with a traditional African sash to show their appreciation for the department's support of the African American community. UW Stout received a $425,000 grant from the Charles Koch Foundation to establish the Center for the Study of Institutions and Innovation. The center will sponsor speakers, panels, and workshops to facilitate discussions about constitutional civil liberties and their impact on institutions. A UW-Stevens Point student was selected for a National Science Foundation Graduate Research Fellowship. Brian Hall majored in Computer Information Systems and Psychology as an undergraduate and received this fellowship to support his doctoral studies in human-computer interaction. The Harmony Bridge Community Music Program is providing music education to students at UW River Falls with hands-on learning opportunities. As early as their freshman year, students can connect with local schools to sharpen their teaching and mentoring skills in a real-world setting. UW Platteville faculty were awarded 3 grants from the Wysis Technology Foundation totaling nearly $130,000. These applied research grants encourage faculty and staff to use their expertise to support economic development in Wisconsin. Another group of UW Parkside pre-med students has been accepted to the RUSH program at the UW School of Medicine and Public Health. This program prepares students to work in Wisconsin's underserved rural and urban areas after medical school. The UW Oshkosh Arts Core Program partners with public schools and the Payne Arts Center to show teachers how they can integrate art into other school subjects. This helps students retain information and engage students who have learning disabilities, autism spectrum disorders, and behavioral issues. UW Crosse Sports are on a roll. The men's track and field team ran to a third consecutive and record 15th NCAA Division III National Outdoor Championship. To top it off, the campus was honored for having the best women's sports program in their conference, taking home the All Sports Award for the first time in 24 years. UW-Milwaukee joined a national partnership of universities and companies working to make the U.S. electrical grid more reliable, greener, and less expensive. UWM shared its expertise in microgrids, which integrate renewable energy from multiple smaller sources. This partnership is funded by the National Science Foundation. A UW-Madison research team was selected as a finalist in Harvard's Innovation in American Government competition. The team created an app to help people recover from alcohol and other addictions. It features a forum to talk to other recovering addicts, as well as a GPS locator to help the person stay away from high-risk areas. UW Green Bay celebrated the first graduating class of the Engineering Technology program this year. The university is proud to help meet the need for engineers in the region. The degree offers mechanical, electrical, and environmental tracks and has quickly become the fastest-growing major on campus. Geography professor Dr. Ezra Zeitler from UW-Eau Claire received the 2017 Higher Education Distinguished Teaching Award from the National Council for Geographic Education. His students and colleagues praised his talent for creating compelling learning experiences in the classroom and around the world. UW Extension is helping working adults get their degrees. They created an innovative system to help online learners through the degree process. This continuous engagement helps increase student success and decrease time to graduation. UW Colleges and Extension partnered with the Northern Wisconsin Communities and Government Agencies to host Preserving Pathways, a neighborhood conversation series. County and government leaders heard directly from audience members about critical issues facing rural communities, such as education, healthcare, and, of course, the economy. UW-Whitewater Stephen Gray became the first member of the inaugural Doctor of Business Administration cohort to defend his dissertation in the College of Business and Economics. The first graduates of this program are expected to walk at commencement this December. Now for a brief look at legislative and budget matters. At our June meeting, the UW Systems biennial budget having been adopted by the Joint Finance Committee. I told you then that our focus was shifting to several outstanding UW system-related budget items, namely compensation and our capital budget. I'm pleased to report that the Joint Finance Committee has since adopted a compensation plan that would provide the largest salary increase in a decade for all state employees, including employees of the UW system. While funding was not allocated to cover UW's share of the increase, typically about 30%, we are grateful for the legislature's recognition of the need to invest in our talented workforce. As for the capital portion of the budget, it remains unresolved at this point, as most of you know, but we continue to advocate for additional investments in infrastructure to renovate, remodel, and maintain existing buildings on a number of our campuses. On a related note, the State Building Commission gave final approval last week to move forward on a number of UW system projects, including the construction of a new residence hall at UW-Eau Claire, major renovations of several facilities at UW-Stout, and the construction of the new Lubar Center for Entrepreneurship, a facility we celebrated last month at UW-Milwaukee. Overall, however, the state budget process has come to a standstill for the time being, with legislators and the administration working to find common ground on both transportation and K-12 education funding, which obviously affects our bonding. While we continue to work on the capital budget request, we are cautiously optimistic the gains we have made both in compensation and our operational budget are secure. It is important, it's critically important, that we continue to advocate for a reasonable budget and stay on task until this budget is signed. So thank you to the board members and chancellors and your teams from each campus for the efforts you put in thus far. I think we should all be pleased. It hasn't solved all the world's problems, but it's been a major step forward. So thank you and keep it up. So now for the faculty spotlight. For the benefit of our new regents, this is a semi-regular feature at board meetings along with the student spotlight, which you saw at our meeting in Milwaukee. We invest this time because we think it's important to help the public and of course the board better understand what our educators do, what their workload includes. We haven't always communicated that as well as we probably should have, but I'm very proud of the work done by our faculty, by our staff, and others on our campuses, both inside and outside of the classroom. They have diverse responsibilities for teaching, advising, obviously many administrative responsibilities as well, for research, for outreach, and of course, they take care of their families in most cases. So today I am pleased to present a colleague from UW Extension, Tara Johnson. Tara is an entrepreneur and founder of Tara's Way. It's kind of a neat play on words, isn't it? A national brand of organic and grass-fed whey protein. She is also the founder of the Food Finance Institute and the UW Extension's Division of Business and Entrepreneurship. Her mission is to provide farm and food entrepreneurs with sophisticated financial technical assistance through training, through educational resources, through tools and mentorship. Her newest educational initiative within the Food Finance Institute is Edible Alpha. So Edible Alpha, which works with food businesses. I should probably explain a little bit more about that in a moment. So please join me in welcoming Tara Johnson.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. It's really an honor to be here, and I get to speak from both my experience in the private sector as an entrepreneur and as somebody who has come to the university to kind of supercharge what I've done personally. I could do this a lot of places. I do it within University of Wisconsin Extension because this is a great university. And I do it because this has enabled me to expand my reach considerably. And I can't wait to tell you what I've been up to. So the Food Finance Institute started because when I started Tara's Way, I had to build a factory. That meant I had to raise $14 million to start my business. So for those of you who are in the private sector, you'll know that raising $14 million to start a business is kind of a rough undertaking. I learned a lot about money in that process. I took that from an idea in my head to raising the money, to building a plant in a rural community in Wisconsin, to launching a successful national brand and selling that company to a public company. That's kind of the full arc of the business entrepreneur experience. And I learned that raising money is complicated and running a business is complicated. And while entrepreneurship has existed forever and is the bedrock of our country, I think, people need help to do this. And when they're young businesses, they don't have the money to pay for sophisticated technical assistance. And that's what it takes to raise that kind of money. And it takes more money to start businesses these days than it ever did before. And so I started the Food Finance Institute because I was too young to retire and because I wanted to help these young businesses get started. And so I do, what we do in Food Finance Institute is help businesses become fundable. You have to have a fundable business model or nobody's giving you money. We also need to cultivate sources of money for food and agriculture, specifically entrepreneurial food and agriculture. So we do that too. And we marry them so we get successful new food businesses. Now that can sound kind of wonky in a way, but I will tell you that it is extraordinarily important. One of the things that I do in food finance is people ask me to come and speak to, say, chambers of commerce in rural communities because it's kind of inspirational, the story that I have. And the last time I did this was a couple months ago, and somebody at the end raised her hand. She was a dairy farmer, and she said, our town is dying. What can you do to help us? And I started asking some questions about it, and she was expressing the distress of dairy in the state, which is why you had your Wisconsin Idea conference. Because it has been a difficult couple of years for dairy. And Tara's Way is like an extraordinary success story, right, in the world of dairy. And what I said to her was that Tara's Way was successful in bringing new entrepreneurship to a rural community. My plant is in Reedsburg. And I've got lots of other success stories in the companies that I've been working with. So here are a few of them. Landmark Creamery. So Landmark is owned by two Annas, two women. One of them started out milking sheep. Then she started making sheep milk cheese. And she's now selling, the two Annas are selling their cheese in every major high-end cheese market in the country. Lonesome Stone Milling is an organic grain milling operation in Lone Rock, Wisconsin. Any of you been to Lone Rock lately? The only thing there is a tavern, right? And Lonesome Stone Milling, right? Right? They have everything they need in a tavern, except, yeah. But so Gilbert just told me a new town board member came on, and the first thing they did was come to his business and say, what can we do to help you? Because they are the major employer in Lone Rock now. The Wisconsin Food Hub Cooperative is in the Central Sands region of the state, and that is a traditional vegetable growing region in our state. And the Food Hub Cooperative, when I started working with them, was losing money like a lot of hubs were. And they really didn't realize how close they were to running out of cash. So I helped them get through that. They hit profitability last year. 40 farms work with that hub. And what I'm particularly enthused about there is that there's a core of farms there who are second and third generation vegetable growers in the state, and they are in the process of growing those farms and transitioning them to new generations. And for those of you who have touched agriculture in this state, you know that that is a really significant thing. The other thing that's really significant is I started working with Yum Butter when they were grinding peanuts in a blender and selling at a farmer's market. They put their butter, they made blends with some high functionality blends, put them in squeezable containers that you can squeeze onto a cracker, and they became a national brand. They're in Target all around the country. And a private equity fund was started specifically in Minnesota, specifically to bring together Yum Butter, RP Pasta, which is another local company, and Onabar into a family of brands. They bought a facility in Madison, and they're going to be co-packing and manufacturing all of those. And what is super exciting is we poached them from Colorado, which for me is great because Colorado is kind of the epicenter of a lot of startups in food. So we got them here. So I came to the point where I couldn't take any more clients. So what am I going to do next? Because there is a lot of demand for the kind of work I do. And so I looked around my the Division of Business and Entrepreneurship within Extension, and there are a lot of people around the state who could do this kind of technical assistance with some training. So I took what was in my head, developed some training, and started training people around the state. And so I've trained people in the small business development centers, which are located all over the state, and also co-op extension people who are local to all the counties in the state. And they're starting to deliver this kind of technical assistance. So some of these success stories you see here are done working with these other technical assistance providers around the state. So this is a really great way for me to extend my reach. One of the things I want to highlight here, Guerrilla Goods, they recover, so if you grow kale, you can't harvest it all for a retail store, it doesn't meet the standard for it. What Guerrilla Goods will do with that kale is use a proprietary process to dehydrate that and make chips, and they make snack foods. And this is a very significant thing for food recovery on the farm level. They're also really great. And I worked with them in conjunction with the Food and Beverage Association of Wisconsin. And Nature's Path is one of the major brands in the national category. They're a Canadian company. They have built a manufacturing facility here in Wisconsin, and they made a strategic investment in Guerrilla Goods, which is going to massively expand that business here in the state. So now all that content that I'm teaching people, it has a broader application than just the people I'm training. It's coming out of my head, but it's also coming out of other folks' heads. And so I wanted to put it on steroids. And how do you do that in the modern world? You do a digital platform. So I have started something called Edible Alpha. Now, alpha is not an alpha dog. It is alpha as in outperforming the market in an investment. And Edible Alpha is a platform that is designed to support consultants, entrepreneurs, lenders, and investors. Because I've found that people who may be active investors in tech and biotech don't really understand food. They don't understand how to make money in food or value-added ag. And by helping them understand that, we get more money moving. So right now, I have a podcast that's called Edible Alpha. It's available on all of the major podcast platforms around the country. And I'm proud to say, actually, we've gone over 4,000 listeners, which doesn't sound like a lot because what we hear about is the million people podcast. But it turns out that's in the top 5% in the country for podcast listenership. So what I do on those is interview entrepreneurs and bankers and people, any of the stakeholders related to food, and it's all about making money in food. We also have a newsletter that goes out digitally that is a business development resource for food and entrepreneurs, for entrepreneurs and investors and bankers. And this summer, we're going to be beta testing a digital platform that is going to have all kinds of curated learning materials on it, all about making money in food and value-added agriculture. And I'm also starting to do, this year, I will be doing what I call a capital source cultivation roadshow. And that is to get at, we have angel networks all over the state who are doing investing, and they don't understand food and value-added agriculture investments. Like, how do you really make money at this? And once investors are comfortable with that, they will invest. So this is a way that we can get more capital activated for sectors that really impact rural parts of Wisconsin. So what is possible? Oh, a ton is possible for Wisconsin. So we have an incredibly deep history of agriculture and food in this state. I mean, the last time I looked, it's almost 30% of our state GDP is in food and agriculture. So it's not insignificant. And we all know about beer, but we also do cheese. We know about cheese. We know about meats. We do vegetables. We do fruit. And we do agriculture here. We have processing here. So building on these assets and bringing entrepreneurship to them is has the potential to have an enormous impact on the state. And the Food Finance Institute and Extension and the small business development centers within Extension are all going to be here to help this happen in the state. So thank you.
We'll now have our committee reports. Regent Style, will you please present the report of the Capital Planning and Budget Committee? And the floor is yours.
Yes, I'll provide a summary of the 5 resolutions we passed and then ask them to be moved en masse. First, the committee approved UW College's request for authority to permanently release approximately 1 acre of land from the UW Marshfield Wood County lease back to the University Commission, UW Marshfield Wood County, to allow for construction of a cell tower and equipment building by a private telecom firm. It was noted that there'll be no loss of revenue to the system and there'll be no significant negative impact to campus operations. The committee also approved a resolution brought by UW Green Bay requesting authority to relocate an existing replica of an 11th century Viking longhouse, roughly 12 by 26 feet, to the campus, where it will serve as a dynamic learning class designed to promote professor-student interactions and small-size environment seminars. The university area plan to use the structure for their curricula, including education, including biology, food science, history, and ancient and medieval studies. The building will have no electricity or running water in true Viking fashion. The resolution was revised to reflect a change in funding, increasing the amount of gift funding. The committee also approved a resolution brought by UW Stevens Point requesting authority to construct the $16.8 million DeBow Dining Center renovation project to address building infrastructure, life safety, and programmatic issues. The mechanical systems will be renovated, a new sprinkler system will be installed, entrances will be reconfigured, and improvements will be made to optimize the delivery of dining services. When complete, it will serve 3,100 students from 12 different dormitories on campus. The committee also approved a resolution brought by the UW system, which requests authority to revise the funding source for a previously approved project and construct 2 new remodeling projects, one for UW Extension, which is the radio hall renovation, and the other for UW Oshkosh, possibly less exciting but equally necessary, which was the Scott Hall refuse enclosure. Resolution I3F was approved by the committee from UW System, which requested the authority to construct a $1.6 million gift-funded UW Madison, Wisconsin Institute for Medical Research Equipment Lab Improvements Project to accommodate new equipment in vivo laboratories and improve associated offices. The project renovates spaces to provide areas with specific design and protocol requirements. We decided to withdraw Resolution I3G. It's with that I move that we adopt the following 5 resolutions: I3B, I3C, I3D, I3E, and I3F.
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. And thank you, Regent Style. Regent Hall, I'll now call on you to bring forward the Research, Economic Development, and Innovation Committee report. Regent Hall, the floor is yours.
Okay. The READY Committee heard 3 informative presentations that highlighted the excellent work of faculty, staff, and students working collaboratively with business and community partners in support of the important research and outreach missions of the university in the spirit of the Wisconsin idea. First, our partnership with UW System. Erin Hagar, WEDC's Vice President of Entrepreneurship and Innovation, highlighted WEDC's efforts to collaborate with university and state businesses to compress the time frame from idea to product commercialization. Hagar continued a discussion which we began last month by Wisconsin Technology President Tom Still, related to varying perceptions of the state's ability to support startups. Hagar noted that Wisconsin continues to set new records for totals of certified qualified new business ventures and in terms of new funding and investments in startups. Hagar also emphasized that WEDC continues to seek new campus partners across UW system to build on current innovative successes such as Idea Advance. Our UW Stout Discovery Center. Executive Director Randy Hulke provided an update on strategic initiatives and business partnerships led by his team at the Discovery Center. Hulke's presentation summarized recent accomplishments and provided a status update of federal and state partnerships, including the recently expanded Wisconsin Fab Lab initiative. In 2017, the center supported 99 industry and client-funded research and technical assistant projects, producing $35.9 million in cost savings and supporting the addition of 248 jobs to the state's economy, as reported by clients. And then our WISES Technology Foundation, Executive Director Arjun Sangha provided an update on the record results WISES delivered during the fiscal year just concluded. WISES has been successful in significantly reducing technology development costs and in improving process efficiency at UW system campuses. Over the past 3 years, WISES has averaged 60 disclosures annually, more than double the amount reported 5 years ago. Sangha was joined by Dr. Robert McGaff of UW-La Crosse. McGaff is the 2016 WISES Carl Gulbrandsen Innovator of the Year. And then following the WISES presentation, our committee unanimously approved Resolution 1.4B, recognizing UW system support both financially and programmatically for the continued growth and success of the dynamic work of WISES. That resolution reads as follows: that upon recommendation of the President of the University of Wisconsin System, the UW Board of Regents affirms its support of WISES as the sole technology transfer mechanism for research, innovation, and technology transfer at UW System 2-year colleges and 4-year comprehensive universities, and of the further development of policies and practices that support and encourage faculty and undergraduate research, technology transfer, entrepreneurship, and innovation. So, President Bailing, that's the end of our report. I turn the meeting back to you for a vote on the resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. May I have a second on the motion?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes, and thank you. Now we'll turn to Regent Whitburn to present a report on the actions taken by the Business and Finance Committee. Regent Whitburn, the floor is yours.
As you'll recall, twice a year, the system is required to approve and to provide to the Joint Committee on Information Policy and Technology in the legislature a report on our large, higher-risk IT projects. This particular 6-month submission includes 9 different projects. 5 are system projects, 1 at the colleges and extension, 1 for Stevens Point, and 2 for UW-Madison. The all-in estimated throughput tab on these projects, over $52 million. In other action, we moved to extend for 1 year the contract we have with Fox World Travel over in the Valley as we work to implement our system's travel management program consistent with the policy the Regents put in place several years ago. The truth is, some of the campuses are ahead of others in getting this done. The committee will receive a campus-by-campus report at our October meeting. The committee voted to approve UW-Madison's request for a master vendor services agreement with INC Research. This involves the Fundus Photograph Reading Center and sophisticated reading and interpretation of tomography scans taken of the eyes. Very interesting research and work. Also, for UW-Madison and their College of Agricultural Life Sciences, we approved a 5-year contract with Foremost Farms. It's an interesting relationship. Under this contract, excess milk and milk-related, dairy-related products coming through the Babcock Dairy Plant and our other ag facilities around the state. The excess product that we don't need is purchased by Foremost Foods. Or conversely, should our dairy plant come up short of milk products at any given point in time, Foremost Foods is authorized under this contract to provide the necessary product. As you know, our system staff is continuing to work to update, consolidate, modify, and/or propose deletion of dated region policies that require attention. In this particular meeting yesterday, the committee approved deletion of region policy document 3.1. This document concerns matters related to the UW merger in 1972. It's obsolete. Chuck is smiling. Finally, UW-Milwaukee has had a contractual relationship with Caligenics. The company is a subsidiary of Quincy Bioscience Holding Company, and the work relates to brain studies around aging related to cognitive decline. We're doing a 100-day extension of this contract as some legal questions have come up, and our legal staff is reviewing the prudence of a more lengthy duration to this renewal. In addition, Vice President Creamery briefed the committee on important cybersecurity work that will be initiated soon by Stroh's Friedberg, which is a subsidiary of Aon. Among other things, they'll be conducting penetration tests on campus networks looking for attempts to breach our security controls. So consistent with the committee's actions, I'd like now to move resolutions 112, B, C, D, F, E, F, and also resolution 11G.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Regent Whitburn. Regent Milner, could you please present us with the reports of action taken by the Education Committee? And the floor is yours.
We had a productive meeting during which we received a report from Vice President James Henderson on 5 initiatives that he will lead during the coming year, discussed strategic objectives for the Education Committee, and developed and approved 6 resolutions. The 5 initiatives described by Vice President Henderson to be advanced in the coming year include the development of an outcome-based funding formula for UW system institutions as directed by the Joint Finance Committee of the Wisconsin Legislature. The continuing efforts to revise math courses for incoming students, particularly as related to student assessment, student placement, and course delivery. 3, developing predictive analytics to positively impact student success, especially in advising enrolled management and academic programs. 4, review the UW system's policy on monitoring low degree producing academic degree programs. And 5, increasing the efficiency of transfer process. In addition, I initiated discussion with our members regarding the development of a topic for strategic analysis for our committee. We discussed the thoughts and considerations. Accordingly, we will collaboratively develop a work plan and set a course of objectives that would continue for a number of years to be related to initiatives, first of all, considering teaching education, including processes and issues facing our campuses. As our collaborative work continues and advances, I will be certain to report back to the full board regarding these efforts. Our resolutions included approval of a Bachelor of Science in Exercise Science and a Bachelor in Science in Rehabilitation Science at UW-Eau Claire. We had a lengthy discussion and we unanimously approved 2 undergraduate programs within the Department of Kinesiology at UW Eau Claire, including the Bachelor of Science in Exercise Science and the Bachelor of Science in Rehabilitation Science. Both programs were formerly undergraduate degrees with an emphasis within the kinesiology major, and both will remain housed in kinesiology department within the College of Education and Human Sciences. By promoting these standalone Bachelor of Science degree programs, prospective employers and professional school admission offices will better understand what students are prepared to do in both the workforce and in graduate school, as compared to the more general degree term of kinesiology. Moreover, the curriculum will include rigorous, high-impact practices, such as the course that involves applied clinical skills and undergraduate research opportunities, and require practicum experience to include internships with many health and wellness providers in the regions. We also approved the committee also unanimously approved the University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh Masters of Science in Athletic Training degree in the Department of Kinesiology. The university currently offers a baccalaureate degree in athletic training, which was approved in 2002 by the Board of Regents. Notably, the current proposal aligns with recent decisions by the Commission on Accreditation of Athletic Training Education and the Strategic Alliance Partners to require all athletic training programs to be offered at a master's level by 2022. Accordingly, the program is designed to comply with accreditation requirements and will allow graduates of the program to sit for Athletic Training Board of Certification exams. The committee unanimously approved the Bachelor of Science in Environmental Science at the University of Wisconsin-Superior. As the only UW campus located on Lake Superior, UW-Superior is uniquely positioned to serve as an environmental science research and learning laboratory on our nation's largest freshwater Great Lake. This program will also build on the strong collaborative ties it has with learning research institutes. Finally, by adding environmental science majors, the UW-Superior will be able to recruit new students to the campus to compete with the University of Minnesota Duluth, which added an environmental science degree program in 2010 and quickly grew to support 125 students in that major. And we all want to compete with UW Duluth. On March 10th, 2016, the UW System Board of Regents created Regent Policy Document 2024, procedures related to finance, emergency, or program discontinuance requiring faculty layoff and termination. This policy states that the UW System Institutes will submit to the Board of Regents for approval any institutional policy developed in accordance with this Regent policy. On April 26, 2017, UW Green Bay Faculty Senate voted to approve to wholly replace the former campus procedures and to approve new policy procedures related to these financial, emergency, or program discontinuance requiring faculty layoffs and termination. Accordingly, Chancellor Gary Miller submitted a formal request for approval from the Board of Regents for these new procedures. The UW System Office of General Counsel reviewed the procedures and advised the Office of Academic and Student Affairs that they are in compliance with our RPD 2224. Thus, the committee unanimously approved the approval of these procedures from UW Green Bay, and we look forward to other procedures coming in from other campuses in the near future. Finally, the second of two annual step approvals, the committee approved from the trustees of the William F. Files Trust for $6,878,878 for fiscal year 2017 through 2018. These funds will support student scholarships student fellowships, academic programs, Vilas Research Professorships, and Vilas Distinguished Achievement Professorships at both UW-Madison and UW-Milwaukee in biological science, physical science, social science, music, arts, and humanities. Now, President Bailey, I move the following resolutions for adoption by the board. Resolution 1.1C, D, E, F, G, and through resolutions 1.1H.
Second.
Is
Motion and second has been made. Any discussion?
Yes,
Go ahead, Regent Farrow.
Regent President Bailey, I regret I was not able to be at the committee meeting yesterday, and I would have asked this question then, but I think it's a broad enough one that we maybe all would like to, if someone can answer us, or at some point in the future, give us an answer. And it relates to our last item, and for which I think we are all grateful that we have the Vilas Trust doing what it does and its generosity and its size. But looking at it, we all receive copies of who gets what and what amount in salary or auxiliary allowance. My question is, how is that ever represented if there's an article about one of these very brilliant and wonderful members of the faculty doing something, and then it's characterized how much they make, which is of great interest to the people up in the Wedding Cake Building and our taxpayers. And we see large sums generally, but they're all not state-funded amounts. There are these other benefits. And I'm troubled that people will see that somebody is making $150,000 or $200,000, and yet that is not the size that the state is directly responsible for. We have campuses whose professors average $57,000 a year, and they don't realize that. So I guess my question is, how is this represented as to their salary per year? Is it lumped all together with everything, or is there an asterisk that says this comes from the Vilas Trust, for example?
President Crosse, who do you think would be best served to try to answer that this morning?
Probably not me.
I didn't mean to do that to you.
Chancellor Blank, would you like to join us at the podium, please?
I think there's a mic here, isn't there?
Thank you.
So on the Vilas Trust issues, the primary funding that faculty get from the Vilas Trust is research funds and not salary funds. So most of the additional funding that's coming through this is coming into their research dollars. Some of them, and I think this varies by person, receive some summer money, but that is summer money to do research, and it is predicated on, 1/9 to 2/9 of their annual salary. So there's not it's not like their salary is substantially higher as a result of these gifts, if that answers your question.
Thank you.
Okay?
Thank you, Chancellor Blank. Any other questions? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Now we'll turn to Regent Greavy to give us the report of the Audit Committee. Regent Greavy, the floor is yours.
Thank you. The Audit Committee had another effective meeting. Our meeting began with the introduction of the audit team to our new committee members, who include Regent Milner and Regent Atwell. We're grateful for the fact that they've joined our committee, and I'm personally grateful that Regent Mueller has agreed to participate as vice chair of our committee this year. I have no doubt she will make the chair look much more astute than he really is. Thanks, Jan. Our Chief Audit Executive, Lori Stortz, briefly reviewed our progress to date on the fiscal year 2017 audit plan. She confirmed that we're on target to complete all the audits that are a part of that plan that have not otherwise been deferred for reasons that the committee has discussed, with additional reports coming before the committee in October. We appreciate the continued diligence on the part of our audit team. Next, the committee heard reports from our internal audit staff regarding audits completed since the last committee meeting. Mr. Radisky reviewed the cash handling reports for UW Green Bay and UW Milwaukee that were rated satisfactory. He also discussed the cash handling report for UW Stevens Point that was rated unsatisfactory. Chancellor Bernie Patterson and Chief Business Officer Kristen Hendrickson responded to the report and responded to our questions, noting that significant progress was being made to address the concerns. Ms. Namer reviewed the UW-Madison cash handling audit that was rated unsatisfactory. UW-Madison's Chief Business Officer, Laurent Heller, addressed efforts that have been made to address the audit and concerns and responded to our questions. We then had a robust and useful discussion regarding the roles of internal audit and its relation to our various institutions. Ms. Storts discussed the fact that education is one of the roles of the office, and that in the past, internal audit has provided the committee and institutions with best practices letters, and that the office plans to issue a cash handling best practices letter for the October meeting. The committee agreed that this is a useful and important function of the audit team and encouraged that it continue. Mr. Mantell reviewed the payroll continuous audit for the UW system, as well as the report regarding the Office of International Education for UW Stout that was rated as excellent. Mr. Mantell reported on progress to date regarding management's corrective actions to audit comments included in audit reports and letters, and confirmed that management at each campus is responding effectively. The committee also noted that we had requested that the office evaluate the nature of the grading of report opinions based on best practices and professional standards, and bring those results back to the committee this year for consideration. But please note, that request was not made as a criticism of what our internal audit team is currently doing in any way. Rather, it was simply a request for them to confirm what our practices ought to be in that regard. Finally, the committee and some of our chancellors discussed the system audit function versus the previous institution-based approach, along with the benefits of our new arrangement, as well as the potential risks that this new approach presents, and how the audit function can be most effective on a system and institution-based level. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Do we need action on that one? Thank you. At this time, it's currently 10:14. Let's take a very short 10-minute break. Know that we'll start back up in 10 minutes as we have some very important resolutions we want to walk through. So let's have a quick break, and know that if everybody could be back here in 10 minutes sharp, that'd be great. Let's go ahead and reconvene. Today we are recognizing two Regent colleagues for their service, Regent Mark Bradley and Regent Ed Manydeeds. At this time, we'd like to acknowledge their contributions, their company, and their great commitment to the UW. To lead us in recognizing the service of Regent Emeritus Bradley, I'm going to call on Regent Jan Mueller.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Mark, let me begin this tribute to you with two words. 14 years? 14 years. Those of us who are navigating our 7 or 2-year terms are just in awe of what you have accomplished and the dedication that you demonstrated. But I have to say that longevity is only one measure of the impact that you've had on the board and on the University of Wisconsin system. And frankly, it probably is the least important. Instead, your legacy is what you accomplished with your skill and your hard work. You had this ability to understand and articulate the essential contributors to the quality and success of our institutions, and you advocated for them throughout your tenure in a thoughtful and careful manner. As you know, you and I crossed paths a few years ago before I joined the board. I was in a very different role, and we both were navigating a difficult resolution of a program audit, a program evaluation. I recall you handled those negotiations with respect for the process and with your customary skill. In fact, as you know, shortly afterwards, I asked you to be a keynote speaker at a large group of state auditors from around the country that we were hosting. Again, can you imagine a room full of auditors and comptrollers? Well, not surprisingly, you charmed the audience with your measured comments on how to best handle disputes and your statements on the importance of oversight and accountability, and so much more. Former Regent Ambassador Tom Loftus said this about you, and I quote, "Mark Bradley has a passionate calmness that always moved opinion on the Regents to better decisions. He is one of the best Regents I have known," unquote. Passionate calmness indeed. Congratulations, Mark, on your outstanding service to the Board of Regents and the University of Wisconsin system. And thank you, and thanks to your family for their patience as well. The resolution reads as follows. Whereas Mark J. Bradley has served the citizens of Wisconsin with distinguished leadership during his 14 years on the University of Wisconsin System Board of Regents, including 2 years as board president, 2 years as vice president, and is the second longest serving regent appointed by any Wisconsin governor. And whereas during his tenure as board president, Mark worked with UW System President Kevin Riley, chancellors, and others to develop the growth agenda for Wisconsin, which Mark described as the North Star for the path to prosperity for a state like Wisconsin in the 21st century. And he was also a committed advocate for federal relations, meeting with Wisconsin senators and House members on both sides of the aisle to ensure the needs of UW institutions and students were top of mind. And whereas Mark has served on numerous committees, including Business and Finance for nearly 7 years, Education for 3 years, Personnel Matters Review for nearly 5 years, and most recently, Capital Planning and Budget, and served as a regent member of the Research Park Board for 3 years. And whereas Mark was instrumental in the formation of the READY Committee, a standing committee unanimously approved by the board in 2012 at the recommendation of the Ad Hoc Committee on Board Roles and Responsibilities, chaired by Mark. And he proceeded to serve as READY's first chair, articulating its goal as, quote, "to elevate the knowledge economy as a priority issue of the board," unquote, and highlighting for state and local leaders the UW system's role in moving the state forward in partnership with the Wisconsin Economic Development Committee. And whereas Mark took an active role in selecting strong leadership for UW institutions, chairing the Chancellor Selection Committee for UW Superior and serving on 5 more, as well as serving on the Special Regent Committee for the UW System President Search. And whereas Mark chaired the Achieving Operating Efficiencies Work Group, one of the 5 work groups of the board's 2003 Strategic Planning Initiative, charting a new course for the UW system. And he also chaired the Committee on Retreat Follow-Up in 2005, which recommended 4 broad themes of focus, including improving success and access to UW system institutions, increasing baccalaureate degree holders in Wisconsin, improving the student experience, and strengthening stakeholder relationships. And whereas Mark cultivated his genuine love of the university while earning his undergraduate and law degrees from UW-Madison and starting his career as a UW system budget analyst and assistant to the senior vice president, and his appreciation for the university's vital mission, combined with his calm, deliberate manner, good cheer, persistence, and public spiritedness. They've made him an effective UW system advocate, as well as a board member and a leader. And whereas in 1974, Mark and a fellow graduate student, Don Steele, conceived the idea of the higher education location program, aptly named HELP, to create system-wide access for the people of Wisconsin to navigate the new UW system, formed through the merger of the University of Wisconsin and the Wisconsin State Universities. And UW HELP was honored just this year with a Regents Academic Staff Excellence Award in the program category for decades of outstanding service, a fitting and timely accolade to Mark's foresight, vision, and dedication to improving access to public higher education in Wisconsin. Be it therefore resolved that on behalf of the citizens of the state and a very grateful university community, the University of Wisconsin System Board of Regents highly commends Mark J. Bradley for his leadership and achievements as president, as vice president, as a member of the UW System Board of Regents, and as a lifelong friend. Congratulations.
Well, good morning. Thank you very much, Jan. I appreciate your comments, and also thank you, members of the board. I'm grateful to many individuals who have assisted me over the years, and including fellow regents and chancellors and members of the chancellor's staffs, system staff, and also faculty leaders. So my sincere thanks to all of you. There are three people, however, I would like to thank publicly. I'd like to thank Governor Jim Doyle for having confidence in me and appointing me to the board. I would also like to thank Judy Temby, who was secretary of the Board of Regents when I served as president. And also I'd like to thank Jane Radue, who succeeded Judy as board secretary and then later became executive director of the board. And of course, when you thank Judy Temby and you thank Jane Radue, you also thank the very capable people who assist them in the office of the Board of Regents. So thank you to all of them. As Jan mentioned, I have had the honor of serving on this board for many years. However, despite that number of years, there isn't anything meaningful that is original with me that I could share with you. However, there have been meaningful things that have been said by other regents that I would like to share with you. First of all, the former regent and former governor and former professor and former president of the University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point, Lee Sherman Dreyfus. Governor Dreyfus observed that Wisconsin is not a rich state. It has never been a rich state. We don't have oil running under our grounds. We're not located on the East Coast. We're not located on the West Coast. But, Governor Dreyfus said, where Wisconsin can compete with anyone is in education. Now, I'm a lifelong resident of Wisconsin, and I have been very proud of the legacy of public education that Governor Dreyfus talked about. It has been handed down to successive generations by governors and legislators who approved sound public education policies, by capable and very dedicated administrators of our educational institutions, and by taxpayers who supported public higher education, not just because it benefited their children and their grandchildren, but because they realized that a more broadly educated society is a stronger and better society. So my guiding star over the past 15 years as a member of this board has been to try to safeguard that legacy, and I urge you to try to do the same. So how, you might say? You know, amidst the swirl of all the issues and the competing interests that sometimes make it difficult for a regent to see the forest for the trees. Well, The answer was given to me by another former regent, Milt McPike. He was a former regent and also a former high school principal at Madison East High School. One day, Milt and I were sitting next to each other at a Board of Regent meeting, and we were trying to grapple with a budget cut of over $200 million. And now some of you might think I'm talking about the over $200 million cut from Governor Walker. Well, I lived through that one also. This was the over $200 million cut from Governor Doyle. And we were looking at a variety of alternatives, none of which was really very good, and all of which had some unintended consequences. And I turned to Milt and I said, this is really complicated, sort of like President Trump and healthcare. And Milt turned to me with these big hands. These were the big hands that he used when he used to catch footballs thrown to him by quarterbacks from the San Francisco 49ers. And he put one of those hands on my arm and he said, nah, it's not complicated. It's all about the kids, man. It's all about the kids. So simple, yet so meaningful. We come to this board from many different perspectives and backgrounds, yet when we're together functioning as a board, our job is not to placate governors or legislators. It's not to assuage the concerns of alumni or parents or community leaders. They're all important stakeholders, of course, in a public education system. But our job, statutorily and ethically, is to assure that eligible students who seek the opportunity will receive a quality education at an affordable cost. So let the words of former Regent Milt McPike sink in and inform your work as members of this board. It isn't complicated. It's all about the students, man. It's all about the students. So, the wisdom of one former regent gave me my overarching view, and the wisdom of another regent gave me my focus. And a third regent summed it all up for me, and it just so happened it was the first day for me on the job. I received my orientation conducted by former Regent Roger Axtell at the 19th floor of Van Hise Hall. You all should have been so fortunate. There isn't an award called this, but if there was an award called the Regent most sought after to serve with, it would have been given to Roger Axtell. He was a worldwide sales representative for Parker Pen Company in Janesville. He was the author of 8 books on business etiquette practices throughout the world. And he was a very dedicated regent. So there we were, 19th floor, we had our 3-ring binders, and we had a presentation from a senior vice president, somebody from the Office of General Counsel, we had 2 people from the budget office. It was a long, long day, and at the end of that day, one of the other regents commented to Regent Axtell about the passion that he had for this kind of work. And he sat back and he said, other than my marriage and other than raising a family, this is the most important work I've ever done. So as I leave my last Board of Regent meeting, I'm happy to say that Roger Axtell's words are my words. So thank you again, Jan. Thank you, Jane. Thank you, Ray. And thank you, members of this board.
Thank you so much for those wonderful comments, Regent Bradley. Now, to recognize our close friend and my fellow Eau Claire resident, I will turn to Regina Milner to introduce Regent Emeritus Ed Manydeeds.
Once again, good morning. There's a difference in height. Chancellor Blank, you can understand this. I am privileged to lead us in acknowledging the services and dedication of one of our esteemed colleagues, Regent Emeritus Edmund Manydeeds III. We come to serve on the Board of Regents aware that there's much we need to learn. We know that we have 7 years of hard work ahead, but we may not know much about our new colleagues. Over time, however, that changes. Through countless meetings, discussions, debates, travels around the state, and social gatherings, formal and otherwise, gradually we become colleagues, partners, and yes, friends. Certainly, this is the case with Ed, whom I consider a dear friend as well as a valued colleague. And I am not alone in that consideration. In becoming acquainted, all of us have found that we share things in common. For example, Ed and I share family experiences in common. Ed was raised with a family of brothers and is the father of daughters. I was raised with only sisters and have only sons. Now you may ask, now what is that in common? Well, I'll tell you. We had discussions about how we faced a gender learning curve in the challenge of parenting and have often laughed about those challenges. Another example of a common interest and a little known fact about Ed, did you know his mother insisted that Ed and his brothers all listen and learn to appreciate opera? Well, it's true. But seriously, as those of us who have worked with him have come to appreciate, although Ed doesn't seek the spotlight, when he speaks, others listen. Why? Because when Regent Manydeeds speaks, his commentary is thoughtful, balanced, and straightforward. We learn from him, and we appreciate his wise counsel. And on a lighter note, his dry wit. Ed, who is a member of the Standing Rock Sioux tribe, is the first Native American to serve on this board. He educated me. He educated all of us on the struggles Native American children often have leaving their families to pursue higher education, and the struggles their families have in letting them go. Ed has advocated at times passionately for a UW system to expand its connections with and its commitment to the state's Native American population. His leadership has been invaluable in opening doors of understanding between this board and tribal leadership. Significant strides have been made during Ed's tenure on this board, and I speak on the behalf of the board and also give my personal commitment to ensure that your good work continues. We are all honored to have you as a colleague and to be your friend. Now, the resolution of appreciation. Whereas Ed Manydeeds III, dedicated 7 years of exemplary service as a regent of the University of Wisconsin system from May 2010 to May 2017. And whereas through 5 years of service on the Education Committee, Ed helped maintain the high-quality academic programs for which UW institutions are known worldwide, and whereas through 7 years on the Capital Planning and Budget Committee, including 4 years as chair from 2013 to 2017, and 2 years as vice chair from 2011 to 2013, Ed worked to increase the UW system's efficient stewardship of fiscal and capital resources and its responsiveness to the educational needs of all Wisconsin citizens. And Ed additionally chaired the Personnel and Matters Review Committee for almost 6 years. And whereas Ed helped to secure outstanding campus leadership as chair of the UW-Eau Claire Chancellor Search Committee and as a special member, as a member of the Special Regent Committee to select chancellors for UW-Stout and UW-Superior, the latter his undergraduate alma mater, and whereas Ed understands and appreciates the important influence of public higher education in Wisconsin and has helped UW's system honor those who helped work to improve education at all UW systems through his service on the Teaching Excellence Award Committee and the Academic Staff Excellence Award Committee. And whereas Ed helped recognize and promote diversity and inclusivity efforts within the UW system, serving as a member of the Diversity Awards Committee for 6 years, and most recently, co-chairing the Task Force on Campus Climate, in which he has credited concerned UW students for showing Regents that students can face challenges in feeling welcome on campus, and highlighted the need to improve campus climate. And whereas Ed was introduced to the UW system as a youngster by his father, a respected educator and consultant on the Native American affairs, who sometimes brought along his son to UW Green Bay campus as a way to instill the expectation that he too should attend college. And Ed went on to become a proud UW alumnus, earning his undergraduate degree from UW Superior, where an internship sparked his interest in the field of law and inspired him to earn his law degree from UW-Madison. And whereas Ed, as a member of the Standing Rock Sioux Tribe, is the first Native American member of the Board of Regents, and has championed the importance of enrolling and educating more Native Americans and other students of color to increase opportunity and equality. And Ed, together with UW System President Ray Crosse, met with Great Lakes Intertribal Council members, inviting them to the October 2014 Board of Regents meeting to discuss how to further collaborate to benefit and serve Native American students across Wisconsin with the goal of promoting enrollment, retention, and graduation, a partnership he wishes to see continued and strengthened into the future. Be it therefore resolved that the Board of Regents of the University of Wisconsin system hereby commends Edmund Manydeeds III for his leadership and service to the UW system and outstanding commitment to higher education in Wisconsin.
Wow, good morning. Mark, you're unbelievable. What a speech. Regina, thank you. That was amazing. No one said that many nice things about me in my life. I want to thank everybody at this table and everyone who has been at this table with me for accepting me, listening to me, debating with me, and understanding and appreciating what I had to say. And it's been really a great experience for me. Everybody at staff, I appreciate everybody that worked on the different committees and helped me understand things. I'd like to thank Alex Rowe for making me look like I knew what I was doing in capital planning and budget. That takes quite a bit of work, so thank you, Alex. Tom, for all the great legal advice. It's appreciated, succinct, telling us what to do, and following your advice always got us where we had to be. I appreciate it. Ray, it's been great. I really count you as a friend, and I thank you for all you've done, especially for Native Americans. I appreciate it. All the chancellors and provosts, great. You're unbelievable. Every campus I visited was well run, and everybody was getting along, it seemed, and trying to teach our students what they wanted to know and graduate them and retain them, and that's fantastic. And it's been really a pleasure and an honor to meet you and work with all of you. Thank you. 7 years has gone by quickly. I've gone through 2 vehicles, and my partners claim that I owe them 4,000 billable hours. Maybe that's true. When I was appointed to the Board of Regents 7 years ago, and for which I would like to thank Governor Doyle, by the way, I was interviewed because evidently there hadn't been a regent from the Eau Claire area for 30 years. And so they thought that there was finally something to report on at the Eau Claire Leader Telegram. And so they asked me to come down, and we talked, and one of the questions they asked me was, why did I want to be a regent? What was my reason for wanting to do this? And so I thought, well, I've got to come up with something. You know how it is when you're talking to people that are going to write about it, and you're not sure how it's going to come out. I said that, and this was all true, that I had graduated from Superior, that I'd met my wife there, that my children had all graduated from campuses in the system, and that I'd gone to law school, and that this system basically provided me with a good lifestyle, very wonderful way of life because of what I had learned and my ability to earn, and because my kids had all been well educated and were earning and doing well in life. And I thought that it was time for me to give back because of that great gift I'd been given. And so they wrote that in the paper, and it was promptly forgot about. But that's not true. I mean, I came to these meetings and I did things, but I was given back far more than I ever even thought of giving to the system in the state. I got a chance to meet all of you. I got a chance to do things that I never would have been able to do. I had a chance to impact and make a difference maybe for some people that were trying to get into college or got into college and think they could do it, because I've had students say to me, after hearing what you went through, I thought that I could do it too. And I've had students email me and say that they've graduated because they heard something that I said at a speech somewhere. So that 1 or 2 instances of having that happen has been very special, and has given me so much more than I could ever hope to have given the state of Wisconsin. Let me tell you about a couple of things I really want to talk about. I know this is the last time I'm going to do this, so I have to say this. We talk a lot about in the Education Committee about remediation, and we talk a lot about retention of students. Let me tell you that I'm the poster child for remediation. I'm the poster child for retention. I went to boarding schools when I was young, and every day was a fight. I'm sorry. But got through it, and the end result was that I didn't like school. I really didn't. And so I wasn't prepared because school wasn't good. So I needed to be remediated. And I was. And I needed to be retained. And I was. And it works. And let me tell you this. That retention and that remediation was because of teachers, instructors, and professors who took extra time because they saw something in me and did what they had to do to help me. And I'll never forget it. And you know what? You can't measure that by a test. You can't expect them to be somehow doing that so they get paid more, because they don't do it for the pay. They do it because it's their vocation. They do it because it's what they love to do. So don't insult them by testing them. Don't insult them by thinking it's all about money. They need money to live and they should be paid well, but they do it because they love students. So I had to get that off my chest. Now, finally, as Regina said, I'm very concerned about Native American education. I am where I am because of education, because of my father and mother making me, forcing me, threatening me, grabbing me and shaking me, so that I've understood that it was somehow something that I should do and it was worthwhile. And so I think we should continue to make inroads with the tribes. I know Ray's committed to it, Regina is, I know John Bailing has said he's interested in doing that. The tribes they're sovereign nations, they're within our state, and they have a lot to give, but they sit back and they wait because they've been told things and they've been made promises to, and there have been agreements that have been made that have failed. And I think we have a great opportunity to enrich this system, the state, and to help the tribes enrich themselves and them to enrich us through education and helping their youth become educated. And I think it would be very, very profitable for us if we did that in the long run. I think it's something we have to do. They're also members and citizens of the state of Wisconsin. Now, probably said too much. Sorry about getting a little carried away there. But this kind of thing means a lot to me. I want to thank, finally, my wife for supporting me, and even though I heard today that she was glad when I left because she could eat what she wanted to eat and watch what she wanted to watch on TV. I want to thank my partners for putting up with me, and if I do owe them 4,000 billable hours, I'll try to make up for it. And thanks, everyone, for everything you've done. I do appreciate you, and I respect you, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Regent Manydeeds. Today, we're also recognizing the service of Jane Radue, Executive Director and Corporate Secretary of the Office of the Board of Regents. I need to tell you a quick story about Jane. Know that in the last 4 weeks, more than ever, I've learned to rely on Jane in terms of she always has a steady hand, she always has the answer, and she'll give you the answer no matter what time of the day it is. 24/7. Saturday, Sunday, July 4th. Jane is there for all of us. Know that Regent President Peterson and I tried to put on a reception for Jane in her honor. And Jane, in her usual humble and dedicated style, said, "I want to make sure that you and Drew have a great first meeting." So she dedicated to the very end. So I just wanted to make that comment. Regent Mueller, I know you have some other comments for us as well, and please lead the presentation.
Thank you. I'm sad enough about Jane leaving, and Ed Manydeeds made me cry, so I'll take a deep breath. And Jane, let me say there were many Regents who expressed their desire to share the thoughts about your tenure and your outstanding service to the board and the University of Wisconsin system. But I've known you the longest, over 33 years, so I won the contest. We met as young analysts at the Legislative Audit Bureau, much younger, obviously, sadly. And looking back, it was a remarkable group of strong analysts and proved to be a training ground for many leaders in state government. I recall how you were admired. I admired you, and everyone else did, for your legal training and your strong writing skills, skills you employed with great success through the years. And you further honed your analytical skills in other jobs in state government, in policy development and management, before assuming the role of board secretary in 2009. During your tenure, you accomplished much, and that will all be detailed in the resolution I'll shortly read. You fulfilled your responsibilities very well, and at the same time, provided independent, relevant support and analyses to all of us. Your work ethic is particularly amazing. Honestly, when I came to the board in 2013, I thought you worked a 3 to 11 shift because all of your emails are sent out at 9 o'clock or later. An incredible long day. And one recent event, I think, perfectly captures your commitment to your position and to the role that you've enjoyed. I was involved in a recruitment, and for those of you who've conducted interviews, you know how tiring it can be. After one interview, I know that I and my colleagues on the interview panel found out we had an interval of about 5 or 7 minutes, and we just pushed back our chairs with a sigh of relief. I had a little break before the next one. But Jane, on the other hand, when hearing the news of this interval, jumped up, and this is an exact quote, "Every minute counts." And she left the room to complete another task. Jane, you leave an extraordinary legacy of skill and service and integrity. Congratulations and thank you. Thank you to your family, your husband Pat, your daughter Natalie. They are very proud of you, as are we, for all that you have accomplished. The resolution for Jane S. Radue is as follows. Whereas Jane Radue has served for nearly 8 years as the 5th Secretary of the Board of Regents of the University of Wisconsin System from 2009 to 2017, and is the 2nd longest serving secretary in the UW system's 45-year history. And whereas Jane has served 6 board presidents, 45 regents, and worked collaboratively with 3 UW system presidents, including an interim system president, to capably and efficiently conduct and manage board studies, business, ensuring the utmost integrity in governance of an internationally recognized public university system. And whereas, in recognition of her skills and aptitude, the Board of Regents expanded the responsibilities of the board secretary when she was hired to encompass a systematic review of policies to ensure their continued relevance as enduring statements of the board's expectations, more research support to the regents, and independent analyses of issues of critical importance in higher education. In recognition of Jane's ability to fulfill these additional responsibilities with a focus on corporate governance, her position was changed in 2013 to Executive Director and Corporate Secretary. And whereas Jane's legal acumen and professionalism have inspired trust and confidence in new and veteran board members, and her active engagement has included assisting the board in self-assessments of operations, helping to plan new region orientations, focused on responsibility, operation, and ethics, arranging for parliamentary procedure training, overseeing the creation of a searchable database that catalogs all of the board's resolutions dating to the time of merger, and serving on the Regent-appointed ad hoc committee on Board of Regents' roles and responsibilities in 2011, and staffing the work group on UW's system structure and governance in 2012. And whereas Jane was recognized with the President's Award of Distinction in 2009 by President Kevin Riley for her significant contributions to the UW system, including serving nearly 12 years as Assistant Director of the Office of Operations Review and Audit, supporting the Board of Regents Achieving Operating Efficiencies Work Group in 2003, accepting the role of University Legal Counsel for several months at the request of General Counsel Pat Brady, and chairing for 2 years from 2007 to 2009 the particularly lively and diverse UWS 17 and 18 Review Committee. There must be a story there. A far-reaching undertaking that resulted in bringing forward revisions to the Wisconsin Administrative Code that were adopted by the Board of Regents. And whereas Jane is an accomplished alumna of UW-Madison, where she earned both undergraduate and law degrees, an education that prepared her for a successful career of more than 35 years in Wisconsin State Service, comprising positions at the former Department of Health and Social Services, the Department of Transportation, the Legislative Audit Bureau, and almost 20 years at the UW system. And whereas the board wishes Jane well as she looks forward to a well-deserved retirement, to enjoy more time with her family, as well as to pursue many personal interests, be it therefore resolved that the Board of Regents of the University of Wisconsin system hereby offers sincere gratitude and commendation to Jane S. Radue for her considerable life achievements, her outstanding support of the Board of Regents, and her dedicated service to the citizens of Wisconsin. Congratulations, Jane.
Thank you, Regent Mueller, for your kind remarks. It's been a pleasure to know you and work with you over the course of more than 33 years. And it's been my honor to serve the Board of Regents. I'll touch upon 3 things. My thanks to many hardworking people, the august body that is the Board of Regents, and my hopes for the future of the board. First, the thanks. This has been the best job I've ever had. I'm grateful to former Regent President Chuck Pruitt and the others who selected me for this position, and for the board for electing me each year since. With all that goes on in the board office, Chuck gave me some of the best advice at the outset. He said, "Don't let perfect be the enemy of good." I'm still working on that one. I'm also grateful to the other board presidents with whom I worked, the late Mike Spector, followed by Brent Smith, Mike Falbo, Regina Milner, and now for just a few weeks, President John Bailing. I owe special thanks to President Milner for her support over the last couple of years. I've learned something new about leadership from each one of these board presidents, as well as from Presidents Emeritus David Walsh and Mark Bradley, whose past presidencies clearly informed their remaining time on the board. I'm also grateful to former UW System President Kevin Riley for including me as part of his cabinet, and to President Crosse for including me on his executive team. It's impossible to do this job without those valuable connections with the other administrators who support the board in different ways. I owe a great debt of thanks to the staff in the Board of Regents office, especially Jess Lathrop, Megan Wasley, Sandy Cleveland, and past staff members to her, Ann Nottestad, and Emily Gleason. I can't thank them enough for their loyalty and dedication. While the board meetings are the most obvious part of what we do, in conjunction with many others throughout the system, the majority of our work involves responding to a surprisingly steady influx of inquiries about the board's actions, working to make the unique array of board policies a stronger reflection of the board's intent for the oversight of the system, supporting board members and board-appointed work groups and task forces with research, and serving a compliance role in various respects, to name just a few responsibilities. My colleagues in the board office work as hard as anyone I've observed in state government or the university system. Well, thank you. There's not time to mention all the connections I value, but I want to acknowledge General Counsel Tom Stafford and the other lawyers on the 18th floor of Van Nuys. They're great neighbors. In a separate category is my family. My husband, Patrick, my daughter, Natalie, and my stepson, Armand, and his family. They've been beyond supportive. And perhaps most importantly of all, I'm grateful to my parents for instilling in me the value of higher education. Next, as for the board as a governing body, the Board of Regents strikes me as a body that shifts in shape on a regular basis. The flavor or tone of the board changes with the addition of each new regent and his or her interests, approach, and personality. But this body still remains the Board of Regents. Like the system, the board as a whole is greater than the sum of its individual members. The importance of the board's actions in the history of the university system cannot be overstated. Opining on academic freedom, speaking with a strong voice about the value to the state of a university system, selecting system presidents and chancellors who help set the tone at the top, and the list goes on. I've been impressed by the strong commitment of so many regents over the years, who have given so generously of their time and experience, not to mention the deep concern they've shown for providing the best possible public higher education system for the benefit of students. I once calculated that board members are asked to spend on average somewhere around 3 to 5 days a month on university business, which is a lot for individuals who are volunteering their time and have real lives. Finally, from the perspective of what I might call a committed observer, I'll offer my hopes for the future of the board using 5 vowels. The vowels may seem a little hokey, but I offer this list with all good intentions. A, an aspirational, forward-looking approach to the board's business, because the system should be growing in its capabilities and its stature all the time. E, an eye toward history, an awareness that the Board of Regents of this system is going on 46 years old, and the University of Wisconsin board dates back more than 100 years before that, and history can be a valuable teacher. I, inquisitiveness. Board members may grow more comfortable over time, but asking questions is always a good thing. O, a robust oversight role. Regents express in a variety of ways that providing oversight is one of the reasons that they're here, and it's a very important role. U, a university system that is strong and cohesive, but with tremendous respect for the missions of the individual institutions. I wish the board well. I'm still here for another few weeks if you need anything, and thank you again for the opportunity to serve as a member of this, an officer of this board. Thank you.
Next on our agenda is a report from the co-chairs of the Task Force on Campus Climate. As you may recall, President Crosse and then Regent President Milner appointed the task force last fall in our Green Bay meeting. They did it in response to student concerns regarding campus climate, particularly for underrepresented minorities on UW campuses. I ask that Regent Hall come forward, and also Regent Manydeeds, we can't let you go. We need you for a few more billable hours.
Okay.
With that, I'll turn it back over to our two regents.
Well, thank you, President Bailey. Regent Hall and I would first like to thank former Regent President Milner and President Crosse for appointing this task force last year and for recognizing the challenges facing students of color. While the impetus for this task force grew out of concerns related to incidents of racism on our campuses, task force members shared a strong commitment to addressing climate concerns for all marginalized students and employees. We described the process and participants in detail in the April board meeting, but just to review our membership, the task force included members of every UW institution, representing faculty, staff from counseling centers and outreach services, a chancellor, a provost, and several other administrators. The task force also included several students.
As Chapter 36 of the statutes indicates, the establishment of the University of Wisconsin system was based on a desire to serve and educate all of the state's citizens, and teaching and learning are at the heart of the UW system experience. However, for some of our students, the UW system experience has sometimes been associated with feelings of isolation, of not belonging on the campuses that invited them to enroll, and experiencing conflict due to their race, ethnicity, gender, sexuality, or other differences. Research has shown that the important role the campus climate plays in students' educational success and how it can success or undermine achievement for certain student populations. Task force members shared many examples of existing and effective efforts within the UW system designed to address campus climate. Despite these many efforts, task force members agreed that more work is needed to ensure that all of our students have opportunities to succeed in the UW system and to learn effectively, communicate, and work with people who are different from themselves. Our recommendations fall into 4 areas: compositional diversity, structured discussions and dialogue, curriculum and professional development, and finally, leadership and accountability. As to compositional diversity, we spent a significant amount of time discussing the current composition of our student and employee populations. While our discussions focused on many different types of diversities, our recommendations primarily focused on the racial composition of students and their successes, because this has been an area of concern for the UW system for many years. The task force is recommending that several actions receive priority. Number 1, increasing the compositional diversity of all students by growing the enrollment of underrepresented minority students. 2, providing greater support for efforts that increase the high school graduation rates of students of color in Wisconsin. 3, increasing efforts to eliminate the current gaps in retention rates and graduation rates for students of color. And 4, ensuring diversity, equity, and inclusion are priorities in the hiring process, and that institutions engage, retain, and support diverse faculty and staff. In the area of structured discussions and dialogue, the task force discussed at length the importance of providing intentional opportunities for students to meaningfully engage with people of different social identities. Research has shown that it is important for campuses to not only bring students from diverse backgrounds together, but also to create opportunities to interact across racial and other social differences. For these interactions to contribute to student learning and growth, the interactions need to challenge students' pre-existing stereotypes, beliefs, and worldviews. Our institutions provided many examples of their efforts to provide structured interactions and dialogue programs. Some UW institutions offer residential living and learning communities that specifically focus on diversity and inclusion. One institution offers a counseling psychology course focused on educational equity and diversity and includes group dialogues to further students' learning and understanding. Another institution offers similar dialogue programs for faculty and staff. At least one institution offers a certificate program that focuses on cultures and diversity and provides ways for people to bridge differences through facilitated discussions, which in turn often leads to other types of positive interactions. Despite these other efforts, task force members agreed that institutions need to provide more opportunities for these types of structured dialogues and interactions. The task force is recommending that UW institutions give priority to implementing and expanding deliberately structured interactions, intergroup dialogue programs, and academic curricula using evidence-based practices across a variety of settings. These settings would include learning environments, student orientation, residence halls, and student life programming. Task force members agreed that these types of programs and opportunities are essential for first-year students, but they should also include other undergraduate students, as well as graduate and professional students, faculty, staff, and administrators.
In the area of curriculum and professional development, task force members observed that classrooms and other learning environments on campus can provide very different experiences for students of color or students of other marginalized identities. These students may experience a sense of isolation, with others making assumptions based upon the student's race, ethnicity, appearance, or background. Classroom and research spaces can and should be environments where diversity and the benefits of diversity can flourish and positively impact campus climate. Our UW institutions provided many examples of their work in this area. At least one UW institution has made a concerted effort to address drop-fail withdraw rates for students of color through department-level analysis. Another institution uses a student-created film describing the experiences of students of color on campus and in the classroom as a professional development tool. One institution has developed workshops to help students, faculty, and staff identify and minimize the effects of bias on that campus. This is one area that I'd like you to focus on, because what we're talking about is not only the right thing to do, but it does have some added benefits of not only helping us get along, but also helping us earn money as we get out of school. The UW system plays an essential role in ensuring that Wisconsin's workforce has the skills needed to adapt to changing demographics and global economy. Many employers, this is important, place significant value on employees who can demonstrate that they are able to work effectively with people from a wide range of cultures and backgrounds. While employers may seek diverse and culturally competent employees for a variety of reasons, this ability is increasingly viewed as a significant factor for achieving business success. To ensure that our classrooms and other learning environments are spaces where all students can learn and thrive, the task force is recommending that the faculty and instructors participate in professional development on inclusive, equitable, and culturally responsive teaching and learning strategies. The goal is to achieve inclusive learning environments throughout UW system campuses, as well as remote or virtual learning spaces. Also recommended is the participation of all employees in professional development training. The training should not only enhance their own self-awareness and respect for social and cultural differences, but also promote and reinforce their role in building a more positive campus climate. Our last recommendations are focused on leadership and accountability. Leadership is what ties all of these recommendations together and is absolutely essential to addressing the challenges we face. The task force members stressed that leaders at all levels of our organizations, in the classrooms and laboratories, in our academic departments, schools and colleges, in offices that provide academic and student services, in our governance groups, and in our administrative operations, all of that must be committed to and engaged in addressing and resolving our climate challenges. The task force is recommending that all levels of leadership within the UW system prioritize diversity equity, inclusion, and campus climate, and that it be held accountable for achieving positive outcomes in these areas. That the job responsibility of every UW system employee include expectations related to diversity, equity, inclusion, and campus climate, and that performance evaluations address demonstrated skills and contributions related to diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Finally, the task force considered the role of campus assessments in shedding light on how different students, faculty, and staff experience the institution, where an institution's strengths and weaknesses lie when it comes to diversity, and where changes in policies, practices, or programs can be most effective. Research suggests that institutions should regularly assess campus climate to learn about and address the experience of students and employees. Although our institutions have made efforts in this area, the assessments have not been regular or consistent across the system. To ensure that the UW system is regularly assessing and addressing climate issues, the task force is recommending that the UW system adopt a system-wide approach to assessment and that every institution administer a climate survey at least once every 3 years. Survey results would be reported to the Board of Regents. We began our remarks by alluding to our statutory mission developed more than 40 years ago. In order for us to fulfill our mission to serve and educate all of the state citizens, we need to address the climate issues on our UW campuses. We have an obligation to all of our students, employees, and the state more broadly to address these issues. See, we work collaboratively, you notice that? And so we want to thank, first of all, we just want to thank in general the opportunity to serve in this role for our former President Milner and President Ray Crosse, having the courage, the foresight, I think the commitment again to address a very sensitive issue that we're dealing with on all campuses around this country. And oh my God, to Jane and Jess, right? Just like we talked about earlier, always in our corner supporting the research that needed to be done. The planning of the meetings was incredible. And to the chancellors, I know Chancellor Shields was representing the chancellors. I know Deborah Ford was very instrumental behind the scenes with providing input. And then just the representatives from the campus. They were thoughtful, they were candid, but they were still sensitive to what was going on to the campus of their colleagues. And I think between the two of us, and as you add, that we just applaud their courage. And I believe our role as Board of Regents is so critical, and that we have the commitment and the will to do what we talked about earlier with the freedom of speech, but at the same time making sure that our campuses continue to embrace everyone regardless of opinion. But it's a place where every day students want to come and they feel embraced and respected.
I agree with everything that Eve has said, and I do appreciate you having the courage to create this task force, because our students were crying out to us literally for help, and this is in response to that. I too would like to thank Jess and Christine Navia and Jane, because they did the bulk of the work in organizing, putting this together, and I really appreciate it. The task force members who, as Eve has said, were very candid and very willing to help make things better. And let's take this one step at a time so that our campuses, our environments are everybody. And that's not just students of color or marginalized students, it's everybody. People that are bullied, people that feel bad for whatever reason can get help and can be successful in their student lives and therefore in their professional lives. So thanks again for letting us do this.
President Crosse, I think you have the follow-up.
I don't know how to follow that, other than to say I think our country and universities that I've been affiliated with my whole career struggled with how to do this have also questioned their commitment to do that. And I think what we've asked this task force to do is to identify those issues that we continue to grapple with and make some suggestions. Because I believe these challenges are more acute and more challenging today than they perhaps have ever been, at least in my lifetime. The 4 areas that you bring up, it strike me as, I sat here and I was trying to make some notes on that, and I have obviously read the task force report, but only at a superficial level at this point. I think it's really important that we digest this, if I can use that term, and analyze it and try to isolate those tactics that we should be embracing more aggressively. And those critical points that reveal where we're not succeeding and we should be, and being honest about that. And I know how hard the system has worked, and the campuses and the chancellors have worked on the composition of diversity and how difficult that is. And I heard a couple of things in there about reaching into high schools that I think are really important. I appreciate the dialogue conversation. How do we facilitate that? Not force it, but facilitate it, because that's really important. I'm reminded that during our listening sessions around the state with the business leaders, this is the one area they were, I think, I'm not sure I can weigh it in another way, but they were most vocal about this. You're not doing a good job of preparing students to work with those with whom they differ, regardless of whether the difference is race, religion, gender, sexual orientation, or now politics. And it's an interesting challenge we face. And the assumption was that's our problem. You need to fix that. Gee, it's kind of a societal problem too. How do we participate in the resolution of that? I'm committed to this leadership, the 4th point, and the accountability that I think is really important. We go over that carefully with chancellor reviews. We do that. But I like the point you're making about professional development and curriculum and how those are interconnected. How do we do that wisely? Not mechanically, but substantively from a moral and business perspective. This issue is no longer just a moral issue. It's an economic value. And I think we have to all understand that. This state cannot succeed economically without dealing with the underemployed, unemployed, underrepresented groups in at least 2 zip codes in Milwaukee, where African-American males, the unemployment rate's over 50%. And when we need people badly in our workforce today, we have to find a way to resolve that. I didn't mean to get on a pedestal here and preach about that. But I think this is really important, and the university has a significant role. And I'll close with my comment here. As we try to digest this and work on the specifics within this, we too want to be held accountable, because we are a public university, and that means we serve all the people of this state. So thank you.
Let's give our task force leaders a round of applause. Next, we'll turn our attention to capital projects in the UW system. The UW system, like state agencies, is required to prepare a capital budget request every 2 years within the context of a long-range plan. Today, we'll hear from Vice President for Administration, Robert Creamery, and Associate Vice President for Capital Planning and Budget, Alex Rowe. They'll provide us with background on how the capital budget is developed in each biennium and how specific projects come before the board. They will also address some of the strategic issues facing the UW system as the next capital budget biennial planning process begins in September 2017. Following the presentation, we'll have an opportunity to discuss and ask questions. First, however, President Crosse would like to say a few words.
I'm reminded of David Ward's comments, former Chancellor of Madison, and came back as an interim chancellor, he said a chancellor's job is much more akin to being a mayor of a city than it is to just about anything else. And I say that because what we're trying to do is the campus that looks a lot like a city includes buildings for teaching, for research, a whole bunch of other functions, but green space, malls, areas for students to gather. In our planning, we also need to consider the maintenance needs, the changing academic programs, how we organize those, the call for renovations or new construction, and the affordability and limited funding we face. So I'd like to initially thank the governor for the proposed $100 million in all agency maintenance money. We didn't get that in the previous biennium, and that's a big help to us, this fundamental, basically all agency money. Also for projects that he's supporting at Milwaukee, Whitewater, and UW Extension, and we're hoping to receive support for several more projects that several other campuses have put forward that are critically important. So I say that because we all know that costs will go up when projects are delayed. And we're working to try to expedite these more effectively so that those costs are minimalized. We know it'll save taxpayers and, most importantly, on the program revenue side, students money and their families. So with that little bit of an introduction, I've asked Rob and Alex to go through the process of how these projects are developed, approved, and given priorities. And with that, Vice President Kramer and Associate Vice President Alex Rowe, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, President Crosse. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I think the presentation is in part response to lots of questions that in particular Alex receives regarding how projects come about. And also looking forward, just 1 year from now, the next capital budget will be coming to the Board of Regents for approval, and so getting a sense of how do projects get pulled together in the next year may be helpful, given that we have a number of new board members here. What we're going to talk about this morning is really how specific projects are developed, vetted, and combined in developing the 6-year capital plans and also those biennial capital budgets. Alex will focus on the 2019 to 25 capital planning cycle in terms of what types of projects and the associated funding that are included in those and how segregated fees fit into that process. I'm going to conclude with a review of some of the funding trends from the last several years and present some key planning issues that will significantly affect our 6-year plan. Looking forward, as I mentioned, in August 2018, the 1921 capital budget will be presented to the board with the next 6-year capital plan. Campuses are already engaged with Alex and our capital planning and budget group to work on this. I think the discussion yesterday regarding the operating budget foreshadowed some of the points we'll raise today, including affordability and the impact of capital projects on segregated fees, but also the expected program revenue balances related to capital projects. I believe all the board members should have a copy of the presentation and also another handout. So as a quick overview, since the establishment of the university's first institution in 1849 at UW Madison, followed closely by UW Platteville in 1866, our institutions now provide living, learning, and research environments for more than 179,000 students and 32,000 faculty and staff. The greatest expansion of space occurred during the period from 1955 to 1975. Many of our buildings have not been significantly renovated since they first opened. An example of this is North Hall at UW Stout. It was constructed in 1967, and after 50 years, the board approved that residence hall's first renovation project at the June meeting. 62 million gross square feet of space requires a significant amount of infrastructure. As the president said, it's akin to running a number of cities. This infrastructure provides heating, cooling, water, electrical service, and telecommunications to ensure our students, faculty, and staff can learn, teach, and work daily. I think it's important to note that 83% of those square feet are supported by central heating plants. Our institutions are utterly dependent on these facilities. Infrastructure, including heating plants, is a topic I plan to return to at the end of the discussion. Historically, each of the capital budgets has included utility requests such as the $28 million at UW Whitewater for utility work recommended in 17-19. Associate Vice President Rowe will now outline the project planning process used for specific projects and to develop the 6-year capital plan and biennial capital budget.
So the University of Wisconsin prides itself on using an issues-driven planning process. Issues are developed, organized, and prioritized locally at each UW institution. Before we generate a solution to a problem, we like to make sure we've correctly identified the right problem. We abandoned formula-based planning methodology several years back to ensure that broad-based, strategically driven solutions would surface. At the core of all of our planning efforts is the concept of integrated planning. Integrated planning seeks to amalgamate all the aspects of academic, physical, resource, and financial planning. So, okay, I admit this is a difficult slide to comprehend. You do have a larger version in your packet, and the president reminds me it's overly busy. However, our intent is just to let you know that the capital planning process takes longer than you may be aware of, and there are lots of steps, approvals, reviews, and deliberations that take place during the development of a capital budget. The board, as part of its oversight and governance, has approved criteria for ranking capital projects. The last time the criteria was revised occurred in December 2016. One big change in the criteria was the addition of a prerequisite for new square feet, or as the president refers to it, no new net square feet. Every project is evaluated against that criteria before it can proceed. It's a UW priority to repair, renovate, or rejuvenate existing buildings before considering the addition of new square footage. Our institutions work closely with their leadership to ensure that priority academic and student life initiatives frame the identification of planning issues that require possible solutions within their proposed 6-year plan. The planning process is iterative, building upon the project issues and solutions phase, leading to the project identification and documentation component submitted by each institution to our office. At this point, our team travels to each campus to meet with leadership, to discuss their academic and strategic priorities, learn firsthand of the challenges our institutions grapple with to ensure successful students and productive faculty. These visits are invaluable, and we acknowledge require preparation by our planning and physical plant staff in support of their leadership. We learn a lot from our institutional colleagues, and as I've told them, hearing the challenges and issues in their words is quite powerful. We gather these anecdotes for use as part of the capital budget presentation we make to the board and building commission. And from time to time, a visit to campus makes us reconsider our ranking. Touring a building and meeting with faculty can bring new information to us that isn't necessarily clear in the original documentation. In the late spring, we compile a consolidated list of capital projects in order of evaluation ranking. We sit with the president and other system leaders to discuss the submissions in order to confirm the projects that will go forward for consideration by the board. In August of even-numbered years, so now we're like a year later. Sometimes there are special considerations such as system-wide strategic initiatives, or in the case of the last biennium, brought forth as our #1 priority and recently mentioned by the president, all agency funding, as we had not received any in the previous biennium. After we submit the capital budget request, the Department of Administration, so after the board approves it, we submit it to the Department of Administration's Division of Facilities Development in September, who reviews it and will make recommendations to the governor for inclusion in the budget issued in the following year. Building Commission hearings are held in March, and their recommendations are sent to Joint Finance in April. The FY 17-19 capital budget, as you heard earlier, recommendation, is currently awaiting Joint Finance approval. Generally, the governor signs the budget in late June or July, and we start up the next biennial planning process. So this slide seeks to guide one through the stages of a capital project, not the planning process, but a capital project, and the various approvals required by the board and the building commission. As I've just outlined, the board and the legislature approve the capital plan, which takes place before serious design. So it comes first to the board, and then it goes to the building commission. At around 25% design completion stage, the board and then the building commission are asked to approve design and allow the project to proceed to construction. And lastly, should a project exceed its previously approved budget limit during the bidding process, we may come back to the board and building commission to seek approval to add additional funds. So the first floor listed in the various project types as either delineated in statute or the building commission policy and managed through the Department of Administration. Any project costing in excess of $3 million or adds more than 500 square feet, yes, 500 square feet, requires enumeration by the legislature. We group classroom IT projects together into a $10 million program and enumerate them as one entity. UW-managed projects do not require legislative enumeration. So this chart shows the primary sources of fundings to support the capital program. Projects can be funded by one or multiple sources. Any project that is entirely funded with gifts and grants is eligible for UW management rather than the Department of Administration. So I realize this looks a little similar. We are just beginning active planning for the next biennium, as was mentioned earlier. The formal planning conference is scheduled in September, or where we are in the blue column. All major project submittals are due in our offices before the end of December. The next time the board will see any activity on the FY 19-21 capital budget is in August of 2018. We put this up here just to show you there's a lot of steps in this process and a lot of documents that go to underpin all of the requests that come through us. It's a lot of work to bring forward a consolidated budget. It's a lot of work to bring forward a project and justify it and do all of the necessary work in order to present your case. So one area that we continue to refine and improve upon is the financing of projects using fees, and in particular segregated fees, which cover student rec and athletics, student unions, and at times student health services. The board approves that as part of the annual operating budget, all fees, including segregated fees, each June or July depending upon the year, as you did yesterday. However, the capital budget is approved on a biennial basis every other August. Many times a capital project may not have a flat fee, as this graph demonstrates. The board approves the project with an underlying fee schedule, yet it doesn't approve the fee increase until the year it's designed to go into effect. We've been wrestling with this disconnect, and we will continue to work with finance staff to develop a recommendation to address it. Another dilemma that has taken place recently is the delay in project enumeration. The two projects on the chart have not yet been enumerated, but were approved by the board twice as part of two capital budget submissions. Both institutions started collecting the fees in order for us to have sufficient cash to pay for design, as the state doesn't borrow for design. We expected the projects to be approved through the legislative process, and yet they have not been. So that's another dilemma we're working with now.
I'd like to turn to the last piece of the presentation, talking about some of the planning issues and challenges coming in the future. This slide was presented a year ago at the August 2016 board meeting to communicate the approach in developing the 2017-19 capital budget and the 2017-23 capital plan. And the three columns on the right, kind of in the yellowish coloration, reflect the 17-23 capital plan. The planning was based on state general fund supported borrowing, increasing by about 5% each biennium, including all agency funding. At this time, as was pointed out, that's not the amount in the recommended budget, and while we're very appreciative of the funding, including the $100 million for all agency, the plan we've put together is not going to be supported by where we are in the process. Looking to the detail a little bit more, the pieces of the plan really broken into two large groups, the major projects and the capital projects program. Capital projects program being classroom technology projects and then all agency projects. So an example in 1719 of the major projects is UW Milwaukee's Northwest Quadrant renovation. All agency projects include things such as roof replacement and mechanical system replacements. And this reflects kind of the split looking forward the next 3 biennial from where we were a year ago. You add it all up and you get to the totals in the column. A similar chart is for the trend that was presented for program revenue borrowing. This was again presented last August to the committee and the board. And this was really based on particular projects that were identified through 6-year planning. And again, the 3 columns on the right are the ones in the cycle. And it reflected requests that came out of master plans, feasibility studies, schedules, and the project schedules. Typically, before the 15-17 capital budget, these were fully funded based on the request. Obviously, funding has not continued in that same pattern. And again, the projects are broken up into major projects and capital projects. In 17-19, no money was requested under the all-agency for program revenue because about $59 million in existing bonding was brought forward, so we didn't need to ask for new bonding in 17-19. So the next 2 slides present planning scenarios that we'll be testing over the next several months once the final 2017-19 biennial budget is approved to really inform the development of that 19 to 25 capital plan. This slide, which we've dubbed the worst case scenario, models continued downward trend in capital funding and no all-agency funding. As we know right now, we're sitting in better shape on the all-agency than the model predicts, but we're not through the entire budget process. It's clear to me that if we continue to plan and build as we have, we'll continue to fall further behind. The line above is the funding amount, the line below the red is reflecting the projects in each 2-year cycle that aren't getting funded based on the forecast we have right now. The second scenario, which is the better case scenario, best case, reflects essentially all agency funding continuing or some level of funding continuing to support some portion of the projects. Again, even if we get the funding that we're putting in this model, we're falling behind each biennium in terms of what we have in needs versus what's funded. For me, the message from these 2 slides is as we work on the 19 to 25 planning cycle, we need to work very closely with campuses, department administration, and internally to consider how we might plan differently to address our critical facility needs. So the last 2 slides showed funding models based on that planning cycle, and this one pulls together some of the key planning issues as we look forward. Many of these issues are familiar to you, so I will only touch on 2 of these, affordability and infrastructure. I'll start with infrastructure. Recall that we operate about 1,940 buildings every day with 62 million gross square feet of space. The infrastructure that supports these is aging physically and technically. Traditional demands such as heating combined with new demands such as the Internet of Things to pressure the ability of these assets to meet daily demands. Like most of our facilities, the heating plants are aging. In our planning, we've identified significant needs that probably won't fit into either of our scenarios to ensure our heating plants are operating on a daily basis. Affordability is the other concept I think that has to be front and center in the development of our next capital plan. Facilities are essential for delivering the high-quality college experience that we want for all of our students. And the facilities impact many of the charges our students pay, as discussed yesterday and earlier. We need to consider both what renovations, additions, or construction is necessary as we develop the next capital plan. How can we improve planning and delivery of projects? We hope this has been useful to address both immediate questions and to start to serve as a point of reference for capital projects and planning. At this point, Alex and I'd be happy to address any questions.
Thank you, Vice President Kramer and Associate Vice President Rowe. Any questions by board members? Regent Whitburn?
In furtherance to Regent Ring's question yesterday around segregated fees, I just wanted to remind the board of a concern that I had while I served on the capital Planning and Budget Committee, which was this business of student referenda and the absence of a formal Regent policy around student referendum and what is acceptable and what is not. Our own experiences, I think, on the campuses would suggest as upperclassmen we get more involved and would be more likely to be participating in a student referendum. And so then 30 or 40% of students dominated by upperclassmen approve an initiative that will be put in place long after they're gone, committing future students to 30 years of payments. And it's a simple pimple, it's in the done pile, and then ongoing obligations to students like Ryan across the table. So I would encourage us to be thinking about the need for a more formal policy with regard to acceptable thresholds when we make commitments that are going to send a due bill to our grandchildren. Just a thought.
Thank you, Regent Whitburn. Regent Mueller.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have many friends in the Department of Administration, for which I'm grateful, but on the other hand, we've sought to separate ourselves from them from time to time in order to have these budgets completed on time and on budget. Could you comment on where we are in negotiations and giving us more flexibility to move forward with projects?
So I'll make a couple comments, and Alex may want to fill in the details. As you may recall, the board in the 17-19 biennial budget request included a request to have authority over program revenue borrowing and management of program revenue projects. Currently, the board has authority over gift and grant funded projects. That's not included in what has come out of joint finance, and over the last several months, Alex and I have been in discussions with the Department of Administration regarding if we move forward with the current joint finance, how do we work jointly to really improve the delivery of projects, thinking about affordability and accountability. I think our message to them is that we want to be accountable for these projects being done in a timely fashion, and also for ensuring that we're looking at things like affordability. And I think that they're receptive to that, potentially around the smaller projects, which is about 600 projects every 2 years. Hopefully also around the instructional technology, instructional space projects that are very focused on classrooms, and then potentially around delegation of certain larger projects. I think here we need to demonstrate through performance that the system can manage these projects effectively. And as we do the gift and grant projects, I think we'll start to build a track record on how we can perform. The track record being both with the department and with the architectural and contracting community. Anything you want to add?
Thank you. Other comments? Otherwise, go ahead, Regent Farrell.
I can't let it go without saying something. You did it so much more diplomatically than I would have, Regent Mueller. I guess I'm really concerned when we see dormitory needs wait 4 years to even get approval to get moving. When we see chemistry labs in our major schools, our two top schools, that are so, my naive and amateur evaluation, too darn dangerous that I wouldn't want a grandchild of mine to be in them. And I've got a granddaughter looking at nursing with one of them. I mean, I'm just so concerned, and I don't know how we break the timing problem we have with DOA and the Building Commission. When I was in village government, we used to make our plan commission go out and on-site walk and see and touch and feel what the issue was. It's very hard to sit in the East Wing conference room, look at numbers on a piece of paper, and decide what should really be prioritized this year. I think we've had very, very professional help supporting us, and I want to compliment them, Alex, and both of you. But this is frustrating, and I know that President Crosse has done the very best he can, but somewhere somebody's got to wake up. This is ridiculous.
Thank you, Regent Farrell. Other comments or questions? If not, we're going to go ahead and let Vice President Creamery and Associate Vice President Rowe go.
May I make it?
Yeah, go ahead, President Crosse.
Just 2 points, if I may. In the next biennium, I think the chancellors and I are committed and supporting what the board has already endorsed, and that is the system acquiring the ability to do program revenue bonding. We're the only institution in the United States that doesn't have that capability. I think it'd be helpful. But we're trying to do that, addressing the concerns of DOA and the legislature and others in a very collaborative way. And I can say that, and I think Rob was attempting to, we're making progress in that in a collaborative way. I think this is important. But that gets to Regent Whitburn's point. The role of the board will have to change as it relates to how projects are approved. The due diligence that we do currently is not as rigorous as it will need to be when we do that. And the first step in that effort, I think, is to divide this. If you can envision the board doing financial due diligence on a residence hall. Do you have the occupancy rates? What's the projections for enrollment? What are the finances on a residence hall? We're going to have to be, we do a lot of that, but we have to defend that to a bonding agency, as you know. And the other projects that occur on campus, student unions and the like, that what Regent Whitburn is referring to, we will need a tighter policy either way on how that is approved and developed. And I support that. And we have a policy, but I think it has to be, as you use the phrase, Regent Whitburn, more formal, more clearly understandable of the expectations of that.
Sounds good. Thank you, President Crosse. It's fair to say, Regent Farrell, this one's on the list as well. So we'll certainly work towards addressing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks, Alex. Moving next onto the agenda, I had put a placeholder on the agenda to talk about the executive director's successorship. Know that we had hoped to have our successor available today for appointment and election. Know that unfortunately it's taking a little bit longer than planned, but Regent Mueller and myself and our hiring committee is very committed to moving that along as quick as we can. There will be some gap between Jane's retirement and before our successor starts. And so know that Jess Lathrop has agreed to act as our interim acting executive director and secretary. And so Jess, thank you for stepping up. We really appreciate it. Thank you. So more to follow, and know that Regent Mueller and I will continue to work on that quickly and efficiently. With that, we're at the end of our agenda. Unless there's any communications, petitions, or anything else, I think we're set to